Hello and welcome to the Proptech Hot Seat on iPropertyRadio with myself, Carol Talon, the show where we explore trends and technologies driving innovation across the built environment. This show is brought to you in partnership with Proptech Ireland, the hub for innovators, investors and indeed for industry leaders. In the Proptech Hot Seat today is Padraig O'Reilly, CEO of Boxcore. Padraig, you're very welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Carol. We're delighted to be on here and really appreciate the invite. Thanks very much.
My pleasure, Padraig. So tell us a little bit about Boxcore for anybody who's not familiar.
Yeah, so we're basically a software company that has an app that makes it easy to capture, share, and track on-site safety records. So a bit of background myself, I'm civil engineering background, worked as a project manager working for subcontractors in the UK and in general contractors in Australia for almost 20 years prior to founding Boxcore. And whilst doing that, I got very familiar with the problem of how safety information is handled. And typically on building projects, there's emails, it's physically photocopying information and spreadsheets. So a couple of years ago, we decided to have a go at building something to tackle this. Like I guess like a lot of people in construction, everyone knows there's still a bit of a lag in terms of getting fully digital. So we just knew there was a problem, especially with the safety side of things, which is critical when you're delivering a project. Like you really want to make sure you've got the safety records correct for your teams on site. And the options were pretty poor. Like, so as a project manager, when I worked as a project manager, I was always keen to look at the various ways we could move away from paper and the manual process. And we always struggle with the solutions that were out there were very much always struggle with adoption. So we really built our solution so that it's very easy to get the adoption with the frontline staff, the subcontractors, which you need to get to solve this particular problem. And it was going really well. We went to the market last year, up around 80 companies at the moment using the platform, where we got customers in projects from data centers in Europe to high-spec office fit-outs in Dublin. We got first customer in the US and some rather large companies in the UK. So we're getting really good traction, and it's driven by the simplicity of the product. It's very simple. It just cuts out the need for emails when people want to, double and handle information when people are trying to manage safety on construction sites. So going very well. Thank you.
Very good. And, it's always interesting when we're speaking to prop tech or construction tech founders, they tend to either be coming from a very tech background or industry. It's usually one of those. So you're coming obviously from decades of experience in the construction industry across a number of different markets. So I can absolutely understand how you would have been very aware of the challenges that you could hone in on the problem. But in terms of getting the right solution, you would probably be more familiar and therefore less naive than some of the tech founders about the culture shift that has to accompany this. So you might just talk to us about, first of all, the technology approach, but then really how to get the wider buy-in.
100%. Like I think to solve anybody involved in the construction industry, construction management, like building projects, like a live building project is a very dynamic place where you got subcontractors, people coming and going. It's not like other industries where you got predictability, static workforces. So it's got a unique set of challenges. And the technology is only one aspect of it. It's actually you've got to really build your solution around those type of users and that particular situation to get adoption. Like I've seen it myself, companies I work for and solutions we tried where you got these amazing ideas with the people in the office typically go, oh, look, we're going to have these amazing dashboards and this, that, the other. But it falls down at the adoption level with the subcontractors and the site staff. And frankly, then, you're wasting your time. So I've known that through the pain over years of trying to get solutions in the market. And of course, because of the failure to get the adoption on site, you end up defaulting back to emails and manual ways, which of course is really bad from everyone's perspective. So for us, the key was always build something that the frontline staff will want to use, that's simple to use. It doesn't require much training. And that's what we're doing. And we're getting great traction on the back of that.
Very good. There's a couple of really interesting points that you've pulled out there. And actually one of them is, again, something that your decades of industry knowledge and experience on the ground will tell you that maybe a lot of tech founders on the outside looking into construction mightn't be aware. And that is that actually construction, the delivery of construction, the business of construction is generally through a supply chain of subcontractors. So actually, it's not a case of saying to one contractor, this is the technology we're proposing for you, and we'll make it available to your staff. Your staff aren't I won't say your staff aren't the problem, but they're not the people who necessarily, they're not the full part of the conversation there, that it's bringing that wider supply chain. And the other side around the dashboards, one of the problems, and we've talked about it very often here on the show, is that there is a tendency for innovators to, they've identified a problem and they know it's a real problem, they validate it, and they've spent the time getting market fit, so they know the solution they're bringing is the right solution. However, what we found is that not all genuine problems deserve to be resourced, or they're not priorities. And in terms of, if each problem requires its own dashboard to be addressed, then actually this is where we have found people might get the trials, they might even be engaged, but you're not getting the users on a daily basis, so therefore it's not living up to its potential. So do you work in terms of APIs with existing systems that you can actually integrate well with some of the technology? Because it's not like 10 years ago where you're going into a construction company that doesn't have a good tech system in place. Most good contractors now, and I'd imagine your early client base, they all have fairly sophisticated IT systems in place, and a range of them.
No, very good point, Carol. So a really good example. So Procore, I'd say, are generally speaking probably the industry leader in terms of a general project management platform. They provide a great solution for quite a number of the key functions in terms of project management. Your design management, your cost management, a lot of those sort of functionalities. But which they've designed their system as a platform. There's a couple of areas where it's not so strong. So they create a marketplace where essentially solutions that kind of fill the gaps, a customer from Procore can then choose solutions that plugs in, so to speak, and kind of creates a fully adaptable solution. So we've got an integration which we're just completing with Procore. We see a really good synergy there as data to in terms of a partnership. To a lot of the Procore customers love their solutions, brilliant system, but probably just the gathering safety information is one of the areas that's not so strong with, and we kind of plug that gap a little bit. So there's a really good partnership opportunity. So we've got an integration there which we're just completing, which is exactly that. And it's something, when we talk to our customers, a lot of our customers are Procore customers, for example. This is something that just makes a lot of sense. Like they don't want to have to. They recognize you can't have one app that does everything, because there's such a fluid dynamic sort of a situation, but they want to minimize the amount of times you've got to log into different things and data. There's no reason nowadays with the way modern cloud architecture is, you can't have APIs that just take care of the manual work in the background. So data can be synced in the background, saves all this idea of people emailing stuff back and forth and information being double handled and triple handled. So that for us is a key integration, and it's definitely something we're very excited about.
Yeah, I'm so delighted to hear you say that, because like 5, 6, 7 years ago, that just wasn't the situation across PropTech and construction technology, and it was a real weakness. And so there's definitely good innovators who lost out because they just were too tunnel visioned in their in not just in their solution, but in the one problem that their solution was addressing, when actually there are so many problems. I mean, one of the it would be overwhelming if you chose to look at it like that. But I see it as such an opportunity across the built environment, is that there are so many problems across the built environment, whether you're looking across planning, construction, property management, and now into climate tech solutions. We are not going to run out of problems in the next couple of decades.
100%, exactly right. And I think also, this, to really provide value to our end users, you can't have a tunnel vision. We just do this and we don't work with anybody else. If you and the leading companies out there realize this. Like, if you just we provide this and we're working in isolation, you've got to be able to integrate with complementary technologies. You've got to automate this. Companies nowadays expect that. This is how other industries have digitalized. They have integrating software, so that everything really should be built around what provides value to the end user. We see this as a key part of it. Like, we've got to provide something simple that solves problems, but also interacts well with existing technologies there. So you don't have a silo in terms of, we've got a nice little solution here, but frankly, it operates in a separate bucket and this and this and this and this. So companies don't want that. They want their technologies use integrating where they need to integrate. So cutting out the amount of apps you got to log into, cuts out the need to have information in the background in silos. So that's something we're pretty much focused on. And again, we see it comes back to, again, what provides value for the end user, rather than just this tunnel vision of, okay, we're going to sort of build a wall around ourselves and just put our head down, and that you got to listen to your customers. That's not what they want, you know.
Yeah, and I love that. I think that's something early stage companies do really well, listening to their customer. And at some point of the growth of a company, that gets a little bit tokenistic, and it is such a short-sighted way of looking at it, because listening to your customers gives you gives you a line of sight of the pipeline of problems that you have to solve. So it's your pipeline of innovation if you're smart about it. So I think it's the one advantage that small agile companies have, if they are, I suppose, if they have the smarts to really listen to what their customer is telling them and identify the problems. And in one way, Padraig, I'm glad we're having this conversation this month, because it is indeed Construction Safety Month here in Ireland. And one of the great things about Construction Safety Month in Ireland is that I get to spend almost every day chatting to health and safety managers and directors that, quite frankly, only get wheeled out once a year. And that's the reality, even though I wish it weren't. But the one point they always make, and they don't make it in a tokenistic way, they make it because they mean it. And that is that, yes, it's great to have Construction Safety Week or month. And it's great to shine a light, and it highlights the important, and it raises awareness. But actually, construction on site is a high priority on every site for every contractor every single day, because the consequences of not doing that are too huge. And while we have appointed health and safety people, the reality is, I think the culture has changed to the point where every individual on site understands that it's every individual's on site. You're only as strong as your weakest link. So it's every individual's on site to be very safety aware and safety conscious. And that's a culture shift that has definitely happened over the last 20 years. So you might just talk to us about maybe how the alignment of culture happens along with the adoption of technology, and how important is that?
Absolutely. Just to kind of exactly what you're saying there, Carol. Like, I come from I did my engineering course, then worked as a supervisor, an engineer, and then worked as a project manager. Like, for me, like, everything you do in construction management revolves around safety. And it's not something that, you just, a compliance department just tick to the side and tick the boxes and you're no. It has to be driven by the front line. So a supervisor whose job it is to direct the works on site, you need to provide the tools to empower them. I think there's been essentially a mindset sometimes where, okay, we'll leave that to the safety team, or we'll and the actual doing the work is separate, which is not. It's completely integrated. Like, it has to be integrated, and technology has to be built to empower that. And so one of the things we've done, I think, which is different than probably some other solutions out there, is we built our solution so that it's really designed for the frontline staff, that they have the information at their fingertips. So you can't manage safety from the office. You need to be managing safety from the front line. And of course, when you get it right, two things happen. You got a much greater, higher degree of confidence and compliance. So you don't have the supervisors go back and forth to the office to check stuff. It's at their fingertips. And importantly as well, too, you also get higher productivity, because if you can empower your frontline staff and you make it easy for subcontractors to share this information and keep track of it, productivity is improved. So I always see safety and productivity go hand in hand. So coming from a project management background, I would always, even for many years, always disagree with anyone who says, if you get your safety right, your productivity will take care of itself. So I don't see them as a trade-off. I see them to go hand in hand, so to speak. And that's kind of where we framed our product, that it's something that's built around the frontline staff to empower them, so that safety isn't a tool that's left to the office staff. It's built to the frontline staff, and if you get it right, productivity just follows naturally.
I think that's it's a good way to frame it, because you're right. It has always been that traditional, people thinking it's a trade-off. And it always reminds me of the Navy SEAL slogan. It's, what is it? Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And it's kind
Yeah,
of the same thing in construction. Slow is smooth
absolutely.
and safe. And if you get it smooth and safe, then you can actually speed it up, and that's where the productivity gains come as well. So it's always something that analogy always kind of springs to mind when I'm thinking about it. And, I'm very aware that there will be Proptech and construction tech founders listening in, and really being quite amazed at the market traction that you've gotten since 2021, because obviously that means you were a COVID startup as well, and that brought its own set of challenges. But in terms of the range of projects that you're working on, because most people will be aware that if you're in data centers, that's a very different type of site, almost, to not being a site in some cases, to I say a more traditional construction site. So
Absolutely.
how do you manage? Does your software span across the full range of projects?
Yeah, very good question, Carol. So I guess the way we frame the problem, which is a little bit different probably than some other solution, is that we see the problem as we created a tool to make it efficient for contractors to share information with other contractors. So whether it's a subcontractor who's got workers going from site to site, need to send on the workers training records or equipment inspections or the like, they can do that in seconds without having to go back and forth with emails. And whether it's a general contractor who needs to get their subcontractors to send it to it. So it's two sides of the same coin. So if you look, that's the way we built our solution, so that if you're a general contractor, just cuts out all the emails, makes it easy to gather information off your subbies. If you're a subcontractor needs to share with the general contractors, it's flipped around. And because of that, like, we're working with some of the very large tier ones and some of the highest profile projects frankly in Europe. And we're also working with like small subcontractors with 20 workers who essentially work out of a van. And but the fundamental thing is the same. Like, it's create something easy to capture and share information that people can use with minimum training. It's two sides of the same problem. I think sometimes, like, coming from project management background, companies sometimes have these different perspectives. Like, sometimes you go to a really big company and go, well, we need a really in-depth blah, blah, all these bells and whistles and 101 things. And the issue then, of course, is when it hits the supply chain, it just breaks down. So we very much, focus on the problem, which is, okay, we need to build something that's will integrate with your supply chain seamlessly. That's the key to cracking this. Because even if you as a company suddenly are using an amazing technology and you push it into one of your projects, and a big effort from your management team to do that, when that project finishes, then you got to do the whole thing again with the next project and the next project. So you kind of need, with technology, it has to not be something that has to be pushed in or require a big effort. It has to be something that makes people's life easier, and then the adoption will take care of itself. So I think that's been a big reason for the traction we're getting to date. It's make life easier for the users and make it easy for them to use, frankly.
But fantastic. No, I think that's really sound advice. So I would recommend, of anything we've discussed today, if there's any startups there who are at early stage of maybe trying to figure out product market fit, that's some really good advice to take on board there. And obviously I'm conscious of time here, but before we finish up today, just because you've mentioned there in terms of working across European projects and securing your first US customer, would it be fair to say that you have maybe exported on the back, or you've maybe traveled outside of Ireland with your key customers?
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's a lot of companies operating in the Irish market that, of course, are working across Europe. And there's also companies operating in the Irish market that work in the US. So the great thing about the construction industry is so interconnected. So it's great. There's a real network effect once you and it's the exact same problem whether you're in a building site in London or Dublin or Amsterdam or New York. It's people need to do works. You need to check their information. You need an efficient way to capture and share this. So it's not like, I suppose if you were a fintech company, you need to get a license to operate in different geographies. That's not the case. Essentially, they have the same challenges in these different geographies. Because we're cloud-based, it's very easy to adapt, and we can essentially be anywhere. So it's really good.
Yeah, well, let's not underestimate the power of relationships as well, because actually, back in 2016, 2017, we were talking about this, and we see, because we work across maybe prop tech and construction tech, startups and scaling companies, we had always worked on the basis that a route to export for Irish PropTech innovators would be with their existing customers. And interestingly, that didn't happen as much as we thought it would. So you could have somebody using a provider in the Irish market, and then for their UK projects, particularly say if they were residential apartments or something, they would buy the same service from a UK supplier as opposed to bringing the Irish supplier there. But actually, we found almost the opposite is true in the construction context. So in that way, actually, the relationship between construction and technology startups and scaling companies and innovators and their contractors is a much more, I don't want to say much more, well, it's a much deeper embedded relationship. So actually, when those contractors are taking jobs like particularly data centers across Europe and beyond, they tend to take their construction tech providers with them. So it's been a really interesting difference that we did not predict 6, 7, 8 years ago. So I think, and you're really proving that case. So I suppose finally, before we let you go, the US client, is that again the same model, or have you found a way to crack the US market?
Well, funny enough, as you mentioned, there's a lot of relationships. So one of our users in the Irish market who'd worked in this company in New York said, hey, just talking to them, frankly, said, listen, I know you guys have a problem with how you're keeping track of sharing trainer records. Just have a look at this Boxcore thing, and that's basically how we got them. Like, so that was our first customer in the US, which of course you can't beat word of mouth, you can't beat users referring, and that's where it's come from, which is good. Like, so that for us is obviously the number one thing. If you make the customers happy and they start referring it, this is the name of the game. That's what we're focused on.
Well, Padraig, thank you so much, because in the Proptech Hot Seat, we always try to give as much actionable advice and really insights in terms of getting market traction to anybody who's in that frustrating position. And look, even though you mightn't have been in it for a long time, I'm sure you've still been in that position, as every founder is, and getting those early customers over the line and then actually delivering what you've said you'd deliver and keeping those customers happy is such an important part of getting started and gaining market traction. But you almost immediately have to slip into this watching and listening mode where you're then learning from your clients, learning where are the other problems. So you have your pipeline of innovation. So you've given loads of actionable advice for startups and founders and kind of early stage companies there. So maybe just kind of a final word to finish, because it is Construction Safety Month here in Ireland, for companies who are still of any size, who are still struggling to digitize the safety aspects of their operations. What's some initial advice to get them started?
Yeah, look, obviously delighted to reach out to ourselves, like just our boxcore.com website. We'd be delighted to catch up. But I think don't be afraid of it. Like there's definitely we're heavily focused on. I think a lot of companies are afraid of the challenge of adoption. They know the effort of getting a new system is generally, it's been probably painful in the past, but like, we're a company that's focused on that. So there are solutions which that enable fast adoption, that you don't have this big painful adoption curve, so to speak, and you can try out pretty easily, and you can see where you can get value very quickly. So we'd be delighted to speak to anyone who might be interested. You can just contact us through the website or whatever, and we'd be happy to show them what we do, basically.
Super. Thanks a million. That was Padraig O'Reilly, CEO of Boxcore. And thank you so much for sharing your insights there that will benefit not just the industry, but obviously founders who are in a similar position. So my thanks again. And for people listening in, thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the podcast and check out all of the other real estate and construction shows on iPropertyRadio. Before we go, special word of thanks to our sponsor, Proptech Ireland, for supporting the podcast and making these conversations possible. Thank you for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Proptech Hot Seat here on iPropertyRadio.